They said I married him for money, that I was lucky he chose me. But when I found my billionaire husband in our bed with my own sister, they had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't just walk away. I took everything, and I mean everything. If you love stories about justice served cold, hit that like button right now. And subscribe because you won't believe how this ends. Trust me, this revenge is legendary. My name is Tanya, and for 7 years, I lived what everyone thought was a fairy tale. My husband, Devin Lancaster, owned a real estate empire worth over $2 billion, luxury hotels and resorts across 3 continents. We had the Manhattan penthouse, the vacation homes, the private jet. I wore designer clothes to charity galas and smiled for society page photographers. From the outside, it looked perfect. But here's what nobody tells you about marrying a billionaire. You can have everything and still feel completely alone. Devin was always working, always traveling, always somewhere else. I'd wake up in our California king bed and reach across to find cold sheets. He'd be in London, or Miami, or Tokyo, closing another deal, buying another property. At first, I understood. I'd been a marketing executive before we married, ambitious in my own right. I graduated from Wharton with honors. I understood the demands of building an empire. But Devin didn't want a partner. He wanted a wife who looked good at events and didn't ask questions. So slowly, I let my career fade. I became the woman who managed the household staff and organized fundraisers. I told myself it was enough, but about 6 months before everything fell apart, things changed. Devin became different, more distant, if that was even possible. He'd come home at 3 in the morning, reeking of perfume that wasn't mine. I'd find lipstick on his collars in shades I'd never wear, bright reds and hot pinks when I only wore nudes and berries. He'd guard his phone like it contained nuclear codes, and when I'd ask about his day, he'd snap at me, accuse me of being paranoid, tell me I watched too many movies. My friends dismissed my concerns. "Girl, he's a billionaire," they'd say. "They're all like that. You've got the life. Don't rock the boat." But my gut was screaming that something was wrong. Then my younger sister Rochelle called. She was 29, 5 years younger than me, and she'd always been the wild one. Growing up, everything was a competition with her. If I got an A, she needed an A+. If I dated someone, she'd flirt with him at family dinners. When I got engaged to Devin, she didn't speak to me for 3 months, but now she was calling, crying, saying she needed a fresh start. She'd broken up with her boyfriend in Atlanta and wanted to move to New York. Could we help her get on her feet? I should have said no. Every instinct in my body was screaming no. But Devin was insistent. "She's your sister, Tanya. Family helps family." He got her a job as a guest relations manager at one of his Manhattan hotels. $80,000 a year, benefits, the whole package. She didn't even have hospitality experience. I thought he was just being generous. I was such a fool. Suddenly, Rochelle was everywhere. She'd show up at our penthouse for family dinners that I hadn't invited her to. She'd text Devin directly instead of going through me. She'd wear outfits that were just a little too tight, laugh just a little too loud at his jokes, and Devin encouraged it. He'd compliment her hair, tell her she looked beautiful, ask her opinion on business decisions he never asked me about. When I mentioned it bothered me, he accused me of being jealous of my own sister. He made me feel crazy. 3 weeks ago, Devin told me he was flying to Dubai. "Big deal," he said. "Resort acquisition. Would be gone for 5 days." I'd heard it all before. I kissed him goodbye at the door and watched his car disappear down the street. I had a spa day planned for that Tuesday afternoon. Massage, facial, the works. Something to fill the empty hours. But when I got to the spa, they double-booked my appointment. "System error," they said. Could I come back tomorrow? I was annoyed, but fine. I'd go home, take a bath, read a book. The penthouse should have been empty. Our housekeeper didn't come on Tuesdays. The silence should have been complete. But when I stepped off the private elevator into our foyer, I heard sounds, music maybe, laughter, coming from upstairs, from our bedroom. My heart started pounding. My hands went cold. I kicked off my heels so I wouldn't make noise on the marble floors. Every step up that spiral staircase felt like walking through water. The sounds got louder, clearer, and when I pushed open the door to our master bedroom, the world stopped. Devin was in our bed, with the custom Italian sheets I'd picked out. And beneath him was Rochelle, my baby sister, her legs wrapped around my husband's waist, his hands in her hair. Both of them, too, lost in each other to notice me standing there. I don't know how long I stood frozen. Could have been seconds, could have been minutes, but when Rochelle finally opened her eyes and saw me, she didn't scream, she didn't scramble away, she smiled, actually smiled. Then she said the words I'll never forget. He was never really yours anyway. Devin jumped up, grabbing sheets, stumbling over his words. Tanya, I can explain. It's not what it looks like, baby, please. All the cliches that cheaters say when they're caught, but I wasn't listening to him. I was staring at Rochelle, who was sitting up now, completely unbothered, looking at me like I was the intruder in my own home. Something in me went ice cold. The shock crystallized into something hard and sharp. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw things. I just looked at both of them and said very calmly, "You both just made the biggest mistake of your lives." Then I walked to my closet, packed a suitcase, and left. Devin chased me to the elevator, half-dressed, begging me to stay, to talk, to understand. Rochelle stood in the bedroom doorway in my robe, watching like this was entertainment. I stepped into the elevator and watched the doors close on both their faces. Then, finally alone, I let myself breathe. I checked into the plaza, ordered room service I didn't eat, sat by the window looking out at Central Park, and let my mind work. See, here's what people didn't know about me. I wasn't some trophy wife who got lucky. I had a business degree from one of the best schools in the country. Before Devin, I'd been damn good at my job. I'd walked away from my career because he asked me to, but I never stopped being smart. For 7 years, I'd managed our household finances. I ran our family foundation. I knew every account, every property, every investment. I had access to everything. And now, I was going to use it. The next morning, I called Lawrence Chen, Devin's business partner. Lawrence had been around since the beginning, helping build the empire from the ground up. But over the years, I'd noticed tension between them. Devin had become reckless, arrogant. Lawrence was methodical, careful. At a charity event 6 months ago, Lawrence had pulled me aside after too many drinks and said, "Your husband is going to destroy everything we built." I'd brushed it off then. Now I called him. We met at a quiet restaurant in Brooklyn. Lawrence looked tired, older than his 50 years. Before I could say anything, he said, "You found out." Not a question, a statement. I nodded. He sighed and said, "Tanya, there's more. Things you need to know." For the next 2 hours, Lawrence told me everything. Devin wasn't just cheating on me. He was cooking the books, evading taxes through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. He'd mortgaged properties multiple times, hiding it through complex financial structures. He was over-leveraged, overextended, and one audit away from total collapse. And Rochelle wasn't his first affair. There had been others, many others. The hotel employees he had power over, the wives of business associates. Devin thought he was untouchable. Lawrence was tired of being complicit. He wanted out, but needed leverage. Together, we could bring Devin down legally, ethically, and completely. I asked him why he was helping me. He said, "Because you're the only person in his life who actually earned their place. And because what he did to you is unforgivable." I hired Patricia Okonkwo, the most ruthless divorce attorney in New York. She'd taken down 3 billionaires before Devin, and she didn't lose. I brought in a forensic accountant who'd worked for the FBI. I hired a private investigator who owed me a favor from my charity work. We had one goal: uncover everything. What we found was even worse than I imagined. Devin's fortune was built on sand. Half his properties were underwater. He'd been using new investor money to pay old debts, like a pyramid scheme. He had affairs with at least 7 women over our marriage, documented through hotel records, credit card statements, and text messages he thought he'd deleted. And the prenup I'd signed 7 years ago, it had a morality clause. If Devon committed adultery, all his protections vanished. He'd insisted on that clause, so confident he'd never be the one caught. Karma is poetic like that. But here's the best part. Devon had been hiding assets in Rochelle's name. Her bank account showed deposits totaling $300,000 over 6 months, money she couldn't explain. The job he'd given her, she never actually worked. She was being paid for nothing, which meant she was complicit in financial fraud. On a Friday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks after I found them together, I filed for divorce. Patricia timed it perfectly, right before the weekend, when Devon's lawyers would be hardest to reach. Simultaneously, we filed motions to freeze all joint accounts. We requested full financial disclosure. We attached evidence of his affairs, his fraud, his lies. Devon called me 37 times that night. I didn't answer once. Each voicemail was more desperate than the last. First angry, then pleading, then threatening. My lawyer will bury you. You'll get nothing. You signed a prenup. Each message was a gift, more evidence of his character. Monday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I talked to the press, not directly, not with my name attached, but I had friends at financial journals, at newspapers, anonymous tips about irregularities in Devon Lancaster's empire, questions about shell companies, suggestions that journalists might want to look deeper. By Tuesday, the IRS had received a detailed package of documentation. By Wednesday, articles were appearing online questioning Devon's business practices. I also gave an interview to a women's magazine about power dynamics in marriage. I didn't name Devon, but I talked about giving up my career, about isolation, about financial abuse disguised as generosity, about how society tells women to be grateful for rich men who treat them like accessories. The interview went viral. Everyone knew who I was talking about. Social media exploded. Women shared their own stories. Public opinion, which had assumed I was a gold digger, shifted completely, and Devon's empire started crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. Banks started calling in loans once journalists started asking questions. Business partners who'd looked the other way suddenly developed ethics. 3 of his flagship hotels faced investigations for labor violations, tax evasion, and fraud. Properties that had been mortgaged multiple times went into foreclosure proceedings. Investors pulled out. The board of his own company demanded his resignation. Devon called me finally. On a blocked number I answered by mistake. His voice was destroyed. "Tanya, please, you're killing me. I made a mistake. We can fix this." I asked him one question. "Is Rochelle still living in your penthouse?" The silence told me everything. I hung up. Rochelle's downfall was almost as satisfying as Devon's. Once investigators started digging, they found everything. The $300,000, the fake job, her knowledge of his offshore accounts. She wasn't just the mistress. She was an accessory to fraud. Her accounts were frozen. She was facing criminal charges. The family she thought would support her turned their backs. Our parents, our cousins, everyone. She'd betrayed her own sister for a man who was now dragging her down with him. She left me voicemails too, sobbing, begging for help, saying she'd made a mistake, that Devon had manipulated her, that she never meant to hurt me. I deleted every single one without listening all the way through. But the real betrayal came from my mother. Through the investigation, I learned she'd known. For months, she'd known about Devon and Rochelle, and she'd encouraged it. In her mind, Devon would divorce me, marry Rochelle, and keep the money in the family. She'd calculated that Rochelle was younger, more beautiful, would give Devon the children I hadn't yet. My own mother had bet against me. I cut her off completely, changed my number, refused her letters. Some betrayals you don't come back from. Family isn't just blood. It's loyalty, love, protection. She'd failed at all 3. The divorce settlement negotiations dragged on for 3 months. Devin was desperate to settle before criminal charges hit. He offered me $200 million, 3 properties, and control of the foundation. My attorney laughed in his face. We pushed for more. We reminded him of the morality clause. We showed him the public sentiment. We mentioned that several of his former affairs were considering their own lawsuits. In the end, I got $340 million, 5 properties, including the Manhattan penthouse, full control of the charitable foundation, and a gag order that prevented him from ever speaking about me publicly. It was one of the largest divorce settlements in New York history. Devin was left with legal bills in the millions, a tarnished reputation, and a business on life support. Last I heard, he'd moved to a 2-bedroom condo in New Jersey. 2 of his hotels went into full bankruptcy. He's facing trial for tax evasion next year. The man who once flew private everywhere now drives a leased sedan. Rochelle is working retail in Queens, sharing a studio apartment with 2 roommates. Her legal bills crushed her. The charges were eventually reduced, but her name is poison. She tried to reach out last month through a mutual friend. I sent back one message. You said he was never really mine. Turns out, nothing was ever really his. They blame each other now. Their relationship imploded within weeks once the money disappeared. Funny how love built on betrayal never lasts. As for me, I took that settlement and built something real. I started an investment firm focused on funding women-owned businesses, especially Black women entrepreneurs who get overlooked by traditional finance. The foundation became my passion, helping women leave abusive relationships with the resources to start over. Devin's former partner, Lawrence, joined me. Together, we're building something ethical, something meaningful. I've been featured in Forbes and Time. I speak at conferences about financial literacy and independence. I date when I want to, on my terms, and I never ever make myself smaller for anyone. The revenge was sweet, watching Devin's empire collapse, watching karma work its magic. But the real victory is this: I'm happier alone than I ever was as his wife. People thought I was lucky to marry a billionaire. The truth is, he was lucky to have me. He just didn't realize it until I was gone. When they threw away a queen, I built my own kingdom. And that's the best revenge of all. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Subscribe for more real stories of karma and justice. And remember, never underestimate a woman who's been underestimated her whole life. See you in the next one.